Hey, what's up you guys, it's Joey. Today's video I wanted to make about altars. I get a lot of questions about altars, specifically how to set one up when you've never had one before. I find that it's one of the most daunting topics because there are a lot of ethics when it comes to putting together an altar. At least that's how it's made out to be. A lot of people like to say that you aren't going to be able to work with the deity unless you have an altar for them, or you won't be able to cast spells unless your altar is exactly the way that you're told to make it, which is completely untrue. And for that reason, I find that altars is probably one of the most confusing and fear-invoking topics, and for a long time I would be forced to agree. To truly understand the craftsmanship behind an altar, you have to truly be able to grasp the individuality of your practice. The altar is like a physical representation of the spirit, the soul, the force that's inside of you. I like to think of it as a dock on a lake, or somewhere that boats come in to meet with the shore. Think of it this way: your altar is where your physical body meets the astral and spiritual planes. It's also a very, very ornate and specific representation of oneself. And this is why a lot of people have different altars, and also why they're so private about them. And there can actually be multiple altars in one person's space. There can be devotional altars, elemental altars, permanent, semi-permanent, all of that kind of stuff. We'll get into the exacts of that in a couple minutes here, but there are many different types of altars that you can utilize. But really quickly, the history behind altars. Altars have been used for thousands of years in a whole bunch of different cultures. In primitive cultures, this is where sacrifices were made. Now, obviously, we don't ever have the need to sacrifice anything or anyone. That's why it's called neo-paganism. But throughout the years, altars have taken many different shapes, sizes, materials, and today I wanted to come and talk to you about the altars that we have today and how to set up yours. Now, these aren't going to be all of them, but I will kind of go through briefly what the main ones are. There are travel altars, and these are great for picking up and moving. They're great for taking your sacred space somewhere that is outside of your own home. And these can be places like in the forest, or graveyards, or someone else's property, or maybe work, I don't know, somewhere that's not your space. There are devotional altars, which are typically a permanent altar, and these are altars that are dedicated to that specific deity or entity. So the most common ones are ancestor altars, elemental altars, deity altars. Did I say that? And these altars are typically where somebody could leave offerings or communicate with the thing that the altar is for. I see a lot more specifically in the Wiccan faith, elemental altars, just because that's more of a pillar in that religion. But obviously, if you're outside of that religion and use that stuff, it's not taboo. There are also concealed altars, and this is typically what you see kind of on YouTube labeled as travel altars, so they're kind of both. Concealed altars can be both travel altars and concealed altars in one. So these are the ones that you kind of see in Altoid boxes, and these are really, really great for closet witches who don't have a big space to practice on, or they're great for moving to a place that isn't super accepting. So maybe in your workspace, at your desk at work, maybe in your locker at school. Obviously, don't burn candles in your locker at school. That would be bad. A long time ago, I had a little Altoid box altar that I used to take with me and put it in the woods and kind of make an altar where I was. If I was going for a hike, I would just stop somewhere, make an altar, make a circle, and do my thing. And it was great because then you can pick it up and take it with you. Which leads me to my next topic, which is permanent altars. These are altars that are fixed in the place that they are in. They're typically bigger and typically full of things. They hold everything that you could think of. Not always, but this is typically the case. You can go here to read, or to meditate, or to pull some tarot cards, and that is your designated space. Now, technically you can do that at all of these because we create our own sacred spaces, but think of a permanent altar, or some like to call it a working altar, as kind of like a dining room table. It's the main piece of furniture for its purpose. I like to think of my permanent or working altar as the mothership of all other altars. They're kind of all stems from this altar. Now, obviously, you can have just a concealed altar, and that can be your working altar. Stereotypically, working altars are bigger and shelves and bookcases, but a working altar can be an Altoid can. It can be really anything that you make it. And just because you have maybe a concealed altar doesn't mean that your magic is any less potent or real. The idea of the altar is that it is our temple. Because witches don't have a church or a temple, the altar and circle is what makes our holy spaces. We create our sacred spaces because the divine is within us, and that's kind of what one of the main principles of witchcraft is. So the first thing is to pick a place. Now, for some people, the best place is in the north, or for some people, the south. For me, I just kind of think wherever feels best for you. For me, it's less about the direction of the altar or the placement of the altar than the performance of the altar. As per usual, this is completely up to you. It's completely up to A, what you have, and B, what you feel is right. I know that it kind of seems like, do whatever you want, I don't care, but because the altar is basically our temple, it is a very personal process that you kind of choose what makes you feel best. I just found an old piece of wood and stained it, and that works fine for me. Some people use the top of bookcases, or the top of IKEA shelves, or even a small corner of their desk, or all of their desk. The kind of staples of an altar are some candles. For me, I like to put on 2 candles, one for the divine masculine and one for the divine feminine. Some people like to put altar cloths on theirs. I don't. I personally find altar cloth repulsive. I think they're the ugliest thing in the world. Although altar cloths can be useful if the surface that you're working with isn't as pretty or as aesthetically pleasing as you would like it to be. Now, this kind of brings up the question of, should your altar be somewhere that is pretty or should it be somewhere that is functional? This kind of depends personally on what you believe and what you follow. For me, I'm eclectic, so I don't really follow any specific set rules. And also, I'm a Libra, I'm ruled by Venus, and my 5th house, the house of home, is ruled by Venus. So aesthetics are kind of important to me. Some people like to have an altar that is functional. They have 5 or 6 candles in all different places. They have herbs scattered and all offerings scattered and cards thrown and that kind of thing. For me, I like order. I like to be able to look at my altar and know exactly what's on there and what I can put on there. This also kind of raises the question of aesthetic witchcraft, so if you want a video on that stuff, please let me know and I will do that for you. Now, I don't represent elements on my altar just because I don't really work with them in a way that is personified. Completely up to you, whatever you want to do. Now, this may be different if you're trying to go for a Wiccan altar. This is the typical Wiccan altar setup, and I know there are some other kind of like different sects of Wicca and witchcraft that have different altar setup. Now, obviously you can't just have 2 candles. The rest of what you put on your altar is completely up to you. There's really no set guideline. It's kind of whatever makes you feel happy. And I've been saying this whole video. I probably sound so repetitive. Some other ideas of things that you can include on your altar are altar tools. So your cauldron, your athame, your bowling, your censers. Essentially how I kind of look at it is that if you look at my altar, it is a snapshot, a summary of my whole practice. That's the best way to kind of think of it, is every little tiny detail is in there somewhere in some way. I'm going to switch over to my vlog camera. Where is my vlog camera? And kind of show you guys what's going on my altar currently. I do still want to give you a full tour, so not too many spoilers. So this is my altar. Let me light some candles real quick. I just want to show you some of the main things. So obviously, again, I have some I have my main candles, kind of representations of the god. On this side, there's kind of stuff like for the goddess, obviously. I have my cauldron. This is some moon water. So obviously you can see it just kind of holds everything that I need it to. So again, everything at this altar is used, and that's kind of what the point of this altar is to be used in any way that is necessary and also possible. I also kind of wanted to emphasize no 2 altars will be the same. So my dear friend sent over a video of her altar to kind of show altars do differentiate, and some people, her altar is way different than mine. Has a couple different tiers, has more things on it than makes me comfortable.
So this is my altar area. This is a TV stand, fun fact. The main the actual altar part is this middle part right here. And then I just use the sides as decoration and storage. If I'm doing a spell work or whatever, I kind of move this stuff to the side. Then I would do it here, or a reading or whatever. And then obviously feathers, cauldron, that's a bird's nest with stuff in it. My tea leaf reading cup and worry dolls. This is sun water. This is moon water. This one over here. Yeah, there we go. On the bottom.
I remember whenever, a couple years ago, funny story, a couple years ago, a whole bunch of my friends got into all this stuff. One of the biggest things they were confused about is what to put on their altar. And I remember we had a group chat where we would send videos of, you know, what we're adding to our altars and all that kind of stuff. So I understand that altars are so confusing because they almost seem overwhelming. As with everything, take everything a little bit at a time. Research what kind of candles to put on your altar and then do it. And then research what kind of crystal go with the goddess that you're working with if you are. It's just best to break things down into digestible pieces. I couldn't say that. Again, I'm going to do an altar tour at some point here soon. The next video that I want to do is tips for closet witches, so leave down below some questions about that kind of topic. That's the video for today. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching. Do your research. Don't get too stressed out. My name is Joey, and until next time, stay happy, hippies.